We'll call the meeting to order. First item would be adoption of the agenda. All in favor? Motion is carried. We have two delegations this afternoon for the committee of the whole. First of all, Murray Presley here to talk to us about the Comox Valley Development and Construction Association. So Murray, if you could take the podium. Welcome. I see you brought your cheering section.
Obviously the smaller delegation. My name is Murray Presley, and I'm the chair of the Comox Valley Development and Construction Association. Thank you for seeing me. I don't think any of my other directors are here. Anyway, our association was formed August 18th of this year. Our members, for the most part, live in the valley and call it home. We represent property developers, builders, sub-trades, engineers, surveyors, architects, and other related services. We also represent associate members, such as lenders, insurance agents, realtors, lawyers, appraisers, accountants, etc. Our members represent a significant part of the valley's economy, and based on the total BC economy, exceeds forestry, farming, and fishing combined. We not only represent outside of government probably one of the largest portions of the valley's economy, but also a large portion of your taxpayers. Our members and U.S. politicians have, I know, the same general goals of making the valley a great place to work, live, and play. So on that premise, we believe that we need greater cooperation between our members, you the politicians who set policy, and our staff and your staff that enforces policy. I've had the advantage of sitting on municipal council for 15 years in the past, sometimes on the regional district during that time, as well as being involved in property development and construction over the last 40 years. I've witnessed, and in some cases I have been and seen part of the problems between local government and our members. Our association wants to improve our working relationship between our members and local governments. We are both concerned with affordability of residential housing and to a lesser degree commercial construction. I am confident that if we can improve the working relationship between our members and yourselves, we can, through efficiencies, either reduce or at least slow up the rising cost of construction. Up to now, our members have been dealing with the 4 levels of local government, one member at a time. We think our members dealing with the local governments through one organization could benefit us all. For instance, DCC changes are the type of changes that can significantly affect housing affordability. For that reason, the ability to review the changes proposed prior to adoption may allow our members the chance to give input. By the way, I've reviewed your DCC proposed changes, and I like the changes, and I compliment you on the direction of these changes. All of the Valley residents have and will continue to benefit from developers and builders, just like you have all benefit individually. We all either live in houses or apartments, and for the most part work in or for businesses that were developed and built by our members or their predecessors. Our members have built, for the most part, the commercial buildings that these businesses operate out of. We would prefer to work with you for the benefit of Valley residents and not in conflict with you and your staff. In this regard, we'd like to meet with your administrator and building department directors on an informal, semi-annual, or quarterly basis to discuss mutual concerns or suggestions. The number and composition of the joint meetings will require flexibility by both of us, but will be determined by the issues that arise. Again, thank you for listening to me today. If you have any questions, please ask me.
Questions for the delegation? Councilor Price.
And so how do you see it working? Because our staff are very accessible. Would you like to see something more formal?
Okay, it's a good question. I don't want to make it formal at this point because I don't know just what's going to come up. But we see issues that are coming from our members, and they want to discuss it with various jurisdictions that they're operating in. And they bring it to us. We would talk to our members about it and see if there's, maybe it's an issue that we don't want to go and pursue, maybe it's an issue that is important, and then we would try and arrange meetings with the various jurisdictions. So if it's Town of Comox, we would try and set up meetings with your mayor, department heads, and tell them what the issue is from our point of view, and see if there's anything we can do about it before it escalates any further.
Thank you. Councillor Ricardo.
Yeah, you made mention to the changes that we recently have done with our DCC. How do you compare them to the other municipalities around us? Do you see any movement with them to try to come in line with us?
That's put me on the spot, Russ. I haven't studied the other jurisdictions as far as what their DCCs are. I have looked at Courtney.
Right.
What I like about the direction of your DCCs is you've tried to direct where your construction will be by trying to get commercial, for instance, to build in your downtown core. I like the reductions in DCCs. From a contractor's point of view, from a developer's point of view, DCCs are always, oh God, something we don't favor, but I think we recognize it's a necessity. Right. But the determination of how you come up with those DCCs and where you apply them is really important, and I think you made a good change.
Okay, thanks. All right, thanks. Councillor Kinnan.
Yes, in regards to the DCCs and the changes proposed, I know we were supportive of that because it included an open house, and I think the intent is to be transparent and to get input both from your now new organization, but also the public. And that's important to us too, that we hear from both there. And I compliment our staff for taking the initiative there to have an open house first, so it's at the initial stages rather than coming to council and we passing it before public input.
It's communication.
Yeah. And I think that's what you're asking in a nutshell, in one regard anyhow.
All right. Any further questions, comments? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to hearing from you further in the future.
I'm lucky I get to go home now.
All right. The next delegation is Shelley Nickerson regarding the Rob Avenue upgrade project. So welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the Committee of the Whole for the chance to speak tonight. My name is Shelley Nickerson, and I'm here representing over 60 members of the Rob Avenue Community Group, formed last week. I myself came to the Valley 15 years ago for work as an archaeologist on the project that brought sewer and water lines to High Bay. I fell in love with the place and the people, and now I find myself busy raising 3 children in the fantastic neighborhood of Rob Avenue. On behalf of the group, I can tell you that we treasure our neighborhood. It's a unique gem within Comox, a well-loved corridor for school children, seniors, and everyone in between. It might start as the route between A and B, but people return for the street trees, the urban forest canopy, the safety of a sidewalk buffered by a wide boulevard, and overall the aesthetic of a peaceful neighborhood. I'd like to thank Council for investing in our neighborhood with the proposed upgrades. It's a major commitment of public money, engineering, and expertise, and it has great potential to improve our neighborhood. So thank you. We feel that meaningful public consultation can also complement your vision and the legacy of this project. But we feel we need more time and more information. The public information meeting was held on November 26th with about 40 or 50 people attending. And this was the first and only opportunity to review the project that residents were notified of. There have been some significant barriers to feedback on the project for a few reasons. Residents received a notice of the meeting, but it didn't include how to access or review information if you couldn't attend. It gave no specifics about the project, no comment sheet, no deadline for feedback. And at the meeting itself, the aerial maps of the project were displayed with the preliminary engineering overlay. But without any explanation, it was a little difficult to decipher, and the maps did not have all the relevant information on them. For example, the boulevard trees from Church to Pritchard are all scheduled for removal, but only a few of these trees were identified as in conflict on the map. Also, and very significantly, the arborist's report was not provided at the meeting, and no one was advised that this report and the other materials would be available online or at Public Works. Documents were only made available on the town's website as of December 1st, I believe. And the document named Preliminary Overview Part 2 had an error on it that made it inaccessible until just 2 days ago, December 7th. So ultimately, not one person who received the notice or attended the meeting was fully informed of the facts or knew of a further opportunity to do so. No one knew that 59 trees, including all of the boulevard cherries, are to be cut down. No one knew that another 63 trees are not likely to survive the construction. That could be 122 trees lost, and that's almost half of the 300 trees along this corridor. Input from the community could have a profound impact on this project. From new ideas to cost savings, feedback, there's a lot to gain. I have for you a letter from members of the Ecole Rob Road PAC executive, which supports our request for more time and more information. And we also have a petition of 144 signatures collected in the last 3 days on behalf of residents and parents and others who are directly impacted by this project. So I try not to bore you with the details of the petition, but I'll just outline it. As far as 4 major requests to support fair and meaningful consultation. The first is to extend the deadline for public submissions to January 31st, 2016. To allow for informed and meaningful feedback from the public. To provide a project summary and a fact sheet with details of all the project components, changes to the existing streetscape, design objectives, measurements of the roadway, sidewalks, parking lane, the reduction of the boulevard, the impacts to trees, and the details of the street tree replacement program. Third, to deliver to residents a new notice of the proposed project with the full details of how to access the materials, who to contact for questions, a comment sheet, and the deadline for public submissions. And finally, we request that the project timeline be adjusted to allow for sufficient time to incorporate the results of public consultation in a fair and meaningful way. This could include also a commitment to demonstrate how the public feedback would be incorporated into the redesign of Rob Avenue. Thank you.
All right,
Consider
Shelley. Staff to comment. I know our engineer is here and has been in contact with a number of residents on this issue, and certainly as a staff-led process with that open house in particular. And I'll ask her to address the issues around timing and consultation.
Sure. Yes, the open house was very successful. I think most of you were there, so I think it was a hit. We had great feedback. I think it went very well. So since the open house to now, we received over 30 plus comments and feedback from the residences. We're kind of getting the same theme, which I think most of you have the same concerns of the two sections are kind of looked at differently. So from Anderton to Church, in fronting the school and community hall and the tennis courts, that's kind of high volume, that's a busier, people know that that's where all the traffic's happening. So sidewalks on both sides, the cross section, putting in the bike lanes, I think that's a consensus that everybody sees that needs to happen. So traffic calming was also an issue. The road section from Church to Pritchard, we took away that, yes, we need to go back to the table, to the drawing, to the design team and look back. The four main things on that section that we got from the open house and all the comments that we received were tree retention and preservation, the need for the sidewalk on the north side, and as well as the asphalt cross section in regards to the wider the road, speeding issues that could be the result of that. The other one was the biking facilities as well, the need for the biking facilities. So those are the main things that we're hearing over and over and over again. So we have taken that back. We've met with the design team, and we're hoping that we're going to come up with a new cross section and ensure that we take those comments and those concerns and incorporate them into our design. Extending the deadline for comments, I don't see, I spoke with Shelley on the phone that I think if, comments came in 2 or 3 days later, I don't see it. It's more of an informal guideline. So to cut off that exact date, I have no concerns with that. I don't see anything new coming out of everything that we've already got captured to date. I think we've captured the essence of everybody's concerns, and we're going to take those, as I said. So I don't think anything new would come out of extending it to the end of the month or till the end of January. We do like to stay on schedule and get to the detailed design or to the next phase of the design with updated cost estimates so we can bring those forward to council in regards to our budgeting. We're going to be getting started into our 5-year capital plan soon. And then as well, to stay on schedule, the earlier we've seen in the past is that the earlier we can go out to tender with these bigger projects, the better pricing that we get. So the longer that we delay, when contractors get busier, then it has an impact overall. So we'd like to stay on schedule. We've been in contact with the school district and the active school program as well, so getting their inputs to making sure that we're addressing their concerns. So that's sort of an update in a nutshell. Following the detailed design, as part of our proposal with McElhaney, is that we will follow up with each individual, with each property owner to say, this is the final design, you're getting a letter in the mail, this is what it looks like, and then that communication will happen like one-on-one as well. So it's not like we're not going to communicate again with the residences. That goes with every project that we've done. So that's also coming as well.
And just hang on. In terms of your report to council here at the committee, can you also just clarify the timing overall, 2 phases of this project?
Yeah, so the design through our approved financial plan right now is to design for 2015, and then 2016 is construction for the phase 1 from Anderton to Church Street, and then phase 2 we're looking at from Church Street to Pritchard in 2017.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll ask council if they have any questions for the delegation or staff.
Yes, I didn't hear in that process, because you mentioned you've had, quite a bit of input, and I'm also hearing that there are more people who are becoming aware and want to put their views forward. I didn't hear in that, where is the point where this is a new design? Because I think I've heard some significant changes that you've heard. So I'm assuming that there's going to be an open house so that people can actually see and comment on the new proposal. Is that?
Well, the intent wasn't to have a second open house. It was just to gather all their comments and their concerns. The open house that we just had on November 26th was just on the 26th was to introduce the project to the community, let them know what what we're looking at, where did the project come from, why are we doing the project, so giving them some background information on the project itself, sort of a preliminary, this is sort of the layout of what it would be, what are your concerns, we've gathered all those, now we're going to go back to the design team and incorporate those concerns the best we can. And we have to keep in mind as well is that doing these upgrades is for the next 20, 30 years, so we have to make sure that what we're designing today is meeting today's needs, but also meeting the needs in the next 20 years as well. Not to say that we're going to put a highway in there, but you know, we're going to look back and go, you know what, maybe the sidewalk for the next 10 years on the south side is sufficient. We'll design it in a way that when the need comes to put the sidewalk on the north side, that we're ready to go, that we've already incorporated that long-term planning ahead. So those are the type of things that we're going to take back with the design team as we move forward.
And then, as you indicated, you would be in contact with individual owners as time unfolds.
Yeah.
And just, because you mentioned about the 2 phases, and so the second phase, one phase for 2016, the second phase 2017. So, it seems that, you know, certainly for the second phase, that tight deadline of going out to contractors is really not a significant criteria in that.
That's right. It's more for the first phase, yeah.
So in some ways, the fact that it's broken into 2 phases may simplify it. And I'm not sure whether you're coming up with each part as different issues. So maybe focusing on the first phase, and then having more time for the second phase. It just seems though the streets that people live on, you know, people have so much ownership of, and you're quite right, this is something that will be for 20, 30 years. And a lot of those people may be there for that time as well, experiencing it. So I think if we can take the time, and often I think we find out we're on the same page, particularly when we understand, like I just had a quick chance to talk to Al about street trees and you know, the state of them, and you know, it was just a very quick conversation. But I think if you can have those conversations with the community and what the options are, you may even come to exactly the same point, but you've brought everybody with you rather than people. Because when you talk to people individually to say, well, your fence is coming down, I mean, that's important. But it's the overall too impacts everybody, because we all live and work and walk in that space. So I personally would like to see more time that that people can, you know, understand the project and and sometimes you know, just explaining why this doesn't work or this could work. You know, but I think it's important to, because it's such a major project too, and that it's one that we will be spending a lot of money on. So much better to have a situation where the community goes, wow, aren't we lucky, we're having a street upgrade and we're actually going to be part of it and we're actually going to really like it, rather than going, it's going to be imposed on us. So I hear what you're saying about, you know, the timeliness, but I can see that we could make that, you know, make that work, that we can involve the community and still, you know, work side by side. That would be my
Thank you for
preference.
that. Councillor Finn, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to be brief. It seemed to me, after listening to both sides, that there's one step further that needs to happen. I heard that from staff that they listened to concerns and are going to take it to the planning group now to see if they can be incorporated. And I understand that you have some budget deadlines that you have to adhere to make the plan go into operation, or there might be costs attached to it that could rise. And I understand that. However, I hear from the public here that they came and it was a successful open house and that they raised a number of concerns. But it sounds to me like they want to see how those concerns are going to be viewed and looked into being incorporated into the major plan. And I'd like to think that the public is heard at a public meeting, but also that that opportunity to see where their concerns go can be met in perhaps sooner rather than later. That might enable planning to tie in with our financial plan.
All right, Councillor.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned 122 trees that are in jeopardy. So is there a plan to replant trees if those don't survive? You know,
Yeah.
one thing like the cherry trees are quite nice down there, and you know when they bloom. I live at the other end of Roth, away from this part, but it's a beautiful walk, and so you know it'd be nice to do what we can to save those. And Al, you're the professional.
Well, I mean, just speaking specifically to the health and state of the cherry trees, those cherry trees have been in there a long time. I understand full well that the community is attached to them, and I'm not one to just go and indiscriminately order trees to be taken out in any case. They are exhibiting some pretty heavy signs of decline. They do have a nice flush of bloom for that standard 2-week period, but after that they continue to exhibit signs of decline. I'm not saying every single one of them is in the same shape, but they are in decline. Those particular species of trees in this environment, they have a shelf life. We're finding it increasingly difficult to keep and maintain our ornamental fruit trees. Cherries, plums, all of them are exhibiting similar signs of decline. Some species are similar, some species are different. And we have used and planted cherry trees quite aggressively in this community some 20, 30 years ago. What I'm getting at is that we are cognizant of the fact of the importance. From a parks perspective, it's counterintuitive to think any way differently. So we are going to pay attention to detail when it comes into regreening the edge as best that we can, depending on what the design parameters dictate. My job is to ensure that that those green considerations are taken into effect in the design stage, and we will have an opportunity to share that with everybody. We had a brief design meeting yesterday, and this exact topic that we're discussing now was brought up. So we are cognizant of the fact, we are very cognizant of the concerns, and we are going to make every effort to take those things into consideration and implement some kind of softening or green detail that should hopefully satisfy the needs of everybody.
And there is an arborist report on the website. If you haven't read it, certainly worth having a look at. Any other? Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I'm wondering, I think maybe some of the concern has come out of maybe not fully understanding the project. And to that extent, when would the design taking residents' concerns be ready to be presented?
To share. We're hoping to have the 75% design complete by the end of the month or early January. So that's basically our schedule with the consultant. And then following that will be another staff review, and then tweak it and finalize it to final design.
So would it be reasonable or acceptable to have a presentation in early January so that people could see?
Well, certainly staff can bring it back to us here at council meeting.
Yeah.
And I suspect that since there is one, would appear primary point of contact here with Shelley Nickerson, that can be notified to her, and whether you bring all your friends here, it's up to you. But if you do, maybe let us know ahead of time, and we can always book the room next door. So that information can be brought back to council perhaps, or another committee meeting in January, maybe the third week or so of January, or in the fourth week, depending on time.
Yeah.
Because I think that maybe most of the major concerns have been identified at this point. And often they are just a repetition. And I know people are interested in if they have a unique point of view to let it be known, but often it's just similar concerns. So I'm wondering if we could leave it as it is, have a presentation, and then see where we go from there.
I believe that's probably sufficient direction to staff. It sounds like it'll work within your current time frame, and in terms of submitting further comments, it would appear that those comments can continue to be submitted. At this point, it would appear the major issues have been at least highlighted, and there will be other comments, no doubt, as far as final design goes. And that material can also be posted online as things are developed.
And then, well, and if there's something that we've missed, that would be an opportunity to identify it then.
I don't think our engineer has any hesitation in hearing from others as they go along, but particularly if it's coming through Ms. Nickerson here, then that would help funnel it appropriately. Councillor Grant, you have your hand up.
Well, no, I think my concerns are being expressed by my fellow councillors. I was concerned about the trees, and I certainly recognize how much we treasure our own neighbourhoods and appreciate what everyone is feeling here tonight. I like Councillor Swift's recommendation, and so we'll go with that and take it from there.
Yeah, at this point, staff have heard from all of council and from the delegation, and I don't see anything in there that requires a specific direction from staff. Are you satisfied with what's been suggested?
Yeah, I think we'll carry on with the design and receive comments as if more come in that we haven't considered to date. Include those or consider them again, finalize the design and come back and present to council in the third to fourth week of January.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Just in some correspondence that came by, I think it was this morning from one of the residents about traffic calming devices. It seems that we're kind of hesitant to go with those wider curb type of traffic calming devices in the town, whereas in Courtney you see them. There's
speed bumps?
They're a speed bump type thing.
Speed humps?
Is there any thought to have that around the school? Because the discussion was, having the bump out, and I know downtown people get frustrated with those bump outs of the curbs, and for bicyclists and somewhat.
Yeah, that's been with the concerns that we brought forward, suggesting we're putting in the speed humps. Actually, it was the first that I heard that was a speeding issue on Rob. We've never had any complaints. Actually had the RCMP in our office today asking him if he had any complaints, and he wasn't aware of any speeding on Rob either.
Come up to my end of Rob, you'll see speed.
Yeah, so then I looked back when we did the town transportation study in 2011. In 2010, we actually did a traffic count. I believe it was just west of Stewart, so outside of the school boundary, and that was within our limits and our guidelines. There was no speeding evidence there. Since the open house and the concern was brought forward to staff, we actually put out the traffic too, so we're actually collecting data right now. So we'll review that. So putting in traffic calming when there's no need to put traffic calming could have there's other cons, and obviously additional costs and maintaining it, and you have to work with emergency personnel. It slows them down. So we don't want to we want to make sure we collect all the data and make sure that what we're going to present for traffic calming is the right, and if there is a need. So we'll see what that data has been in there for just over a week and a half now, so we'll just leave it in there for a few more weeks. I know the weather was really bad, so maybe more people were driving slower, so I want to make sure we have a good representation of what's happening out there. So
The primary issue around Rob School is congestion and traffic, not speeding per se.
not speeding.
But that sounds good that you'll have more up-to-date information. Councillor Price.
Yes, and I do have to say, and I think it's really important that we do have another open house, because it's one thing to bring a presentation here, and we're the only ones who can ask questions, and there may be even more people who want to come and look at it, and if you have that period, we usually do a 2-3 hour period where people can drop in, and we have, Dester House, Fire Station, we have those spaces that we can put it up, and then people can discuss stuff, and I think you'll find people will be much happier, because just talking to Al now, he was saying we're having a lot of success with magnolia trees, which are very beautiful, and maybe people would go, wow, that could be a very good addition to our neighborhood. So, process-wise, I would really like to see, and I'm glad to hear what Shelley said, that input can just continue, there's no deadline. The concern was that Friday was the cut-off point, and I hear that that's not the case. But, when we get into January, the middle of January or wherever, to have an open house and look at, we've heard your concerns, these are the changes we've made, and just to take it back to the public.
I would suggest at this point that would be something that council would perhaps consider once we have a presentation back from staff in terms of what changes have been made, and then council can perhaps provide direction as if further an open house is required. So I think it's premature at this point to predict whether that's going to be necessary. You may find that the staff will come back and say, we've addressed these concerns and here's our new plan. So I think that's when you would decide that.
But sorry to be so picky, but it's really hard to know if you've addressed people's concerns unless you actually say, this is what we're thinking of.
That's true, but let's keep in mind that this is town infrastructure. And this is a town project, and we know that it's important to let people know what's going on. But it's also important to remember that our role here as council is to look at that infrastructure and take whatever input we have staff input, we've heard from the delegation, and let that process unfold. I can't predict what it'll look like in the third week of January, let's say. Then we can decide whether more dialogue is required. But the bottom line, this is not just a project for the benefit of Rob Road. This is a project for the benefit of the town as a whole. So we have to take those things into consideration. This is a significant infrastructure project. We haven't done open houses, for example, before when we did Guthrie, right? And we did that over 3 years. Now, perhaps that's because there are fewer residences on those streets. So this kind of project may or may not necessitate a further open house. It was rather unprecedented that we did one for an infrastructure project such as this. That's not been our practice in the past. So obviously we have an engaged public on Rob Road, and now we'll see what changes get made from those concerns that have been addressed, knowing the information that's there. And staff will bring that back to us. Staff might even recommend perhaps that another open house be held. But to say that we're going to do one right now, I don't think we have enough information. That's my perspective, but it's up to council to make any recommendations in that regard.
I would just hate that we get to that point at the end of January and it's presented and it's like, well, let's go to an open house, and then the message is the time crunch. And
we know what the time crunch is. We know that staff are working on the final designs, and that's going to carry on. We're not going to lose time in that regard, but they've taken into consideration many of these concerns. They'll work with the consultants on this regard and come back with whatever changes, and they'll certainly highlight the changes that are going to be made. I think that it's going to be perfect for everyone, probably not, but we do have to put into, perspective what this project is.
I guess I personally at some point would like to see
I understand that.
open house, and when is, procedurally wise, when is the best time for me to bring that up?
Well, that's up to you. You certainly can make that pitch tonight. I wouldn't necessarily support that. I don't think it's at all something that we should be considering at tonight's meeting. We might consider that at a subsequent committee of the whole meeting when the design comes back to us. And then we'll have a better handle on what it is and maybe more opportunity to hear from other people. So I don't think there's any secrets here. We're going to be as transparent as we can. It's going to be provided online. We have a point of contact with the residents group that's been formed. So in terms of further dialogue, it may or may not be necessary. I don't know. But council will have a better handle on that come January, I would expect.
Well, we're taking information in from the public until the end of January anyway. So maybe, we wait, we get that information in, and then at that time discuss whether or not, have a public hearing, because then we can address a lot of those things.
And it's an ongoing process. I mean, it's not to say we're not addressing these concerns. We are. Staff are working on it. It is a staff-led process. It will come back to council with recommendations, which may or may not include further open house.
So can we include in this, because I am hearing until the end of January, the people are open to comment. that the representative of the group can now have access to look at the design and ask questions, because
I know that the engineer will be available for any questions that come forward. The representative can certainly be in contact, but there's going to be some work done between now and, say, the first part of January that will have to ensue, and then perhaps at that point a follow-up can be had between the two parties. But keeping in mind, again, this is a staff-led process. We do want to engage with the public, there's no doubt about that, but we also want to make sure that we get the best advice from our staff and consultants going forward.
and we also, yes, anyway, I guess I'm eating that. But as long as there's that, and I think it's easier on staff too if you have one person who is doing the
Absolutely.
dialoguing rather than 40 people coming to you, and you know, because and they're aware of the concerns and how these concerns be met. So there is that toing and froing.
Our staff have always been open to input, whether it's parks, recreation, public works, planning, dealing with members of the public. That's not changing anytime soon. So the fact that we have one contact might, like you say, speed up the process a bit. But I know the staff have been addressing this and many other issues with the public on an ongoing basis, so I don't have any lack of confidence in that regard.
And as long as we don't go too far down the path where it's like too late. I know, because I'm passionate about my road, and I think I
We all are
feel the
passionate about our own
same,
streets,
because
but they are public streets for the
they're
public
public
as a whole.
streets, but it's stewardship for everyone, because
For the whole
what
town.
is good for the people who live on it is also appreciated by the whole town.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Kim?
Maybe just the last comment. If I lived in this neighborhood and was here this evening, the answer that I would want to hear is that the concerns that were brought forward at the public meeting are going to be considered by staff and looked at in making changes if it works out with their good reason and expertise into the plan. And I think that's been addressed and that message has been delivered to them. And when the planning staff comes back to council and addresses council with those changes, that'll be made public to everybody. And they are available still open for suggestions up until the end of January. I think the concerns have been heard, and if I was a member of the neighborhood, I'd be happy at this point. There's going to be some things that I'll agree to disagree with when we come to plans, and that happens, but it's not over now. It's not, things are not being considered from the open house, is that they are, and that there'll be an opportunity to view it before moving forward.
Thank
Unless
you.
I've missed something there.
No, and I guess I would say that I wouldn't want to give people the impression they should leave their submissions to the end of January. The sooner they get them in, the better.
So the bottom message is, let's get this right with input from our professional staff, but also input from the neighborhood.
All right, anything further on that? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. So we'll carry on with the rest of our meeting, and we'll give you guys a few minutes to depart.
Is it possible for me to ask questions?
At this point, you presented your delegation. If you have questions for
Or
staff,
reply
you
to
can certainly
comments?
you can certainly provide those to the staff directly.
I think on behalf of the group, and the petition that we have collected, 144 people do not feel that they've been informed adequately and have not had sufficient time to review the project and comment. So I appreciate December 31st as, is that what we decided?
January.
Well, January 31st is the latest possible time, I think, and input should be provided. But I would certainly encourage anyone in the group. December 31st should be a target that we're working towards, if not sooner.
So when we go back out to the interested parties, we can say that we have until the 31st of January.
You do, but
So
I
you
would
have
suggest
any-
that, given what you've heard tonight, that the 75% design will be completed by the early part of January. They really want to have, if there's other things that we haven't heard, and I think we've heard quite a bit, it would appear, then they should get their comments in the next 20 days.
I will inform our group to that effect.
Thank
And I would also just like to say that, allotting time to include meaningful feedback means being able to inform everyone effectively. And so thank you for taking the extra time to do that. While it is an infrastructure project, that's the roadway. The other things are local issues, the sidewalks, the trees, they're very much, they have great capacity to improve the neighborhood and the community as a whole. So we hope that the public input is valued for that reason. The expertise of staff on the engineering project is of course instrumental, and we represent the local expertise of how it's used. We represent almost all of the residents in the area. We have a letter of support from the executive of the 450 students that attend Rob Road School, so it's a lot of concerns.
Well, thank you for those
that haven't
comments,
been
and
addressed.
we'll be no doubt dealing with this matter further as we go forward. All right, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda here in a moment, once everyone is cleared, so we'll just take a breather.
Can I submit the
It's nice to have tables under the school.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the audit service plan, and a motion to receive the audit service plan is required.
Move to see.
Second.
On receipt then, all in favor? Motion's carried. Brought to Aspire Director of Finance, relatively self-explanatory. There's a few changes there you'll see in the terms of reference, in terms of the audit from Arizona's opinion. So I don't know if Director of Finance wants to add anything further at this time, and if not, then council can certainly ask questions. Who's forthcoming with anything further? So questions for you? There may be other questions on an ongoing basis, and as the audit proceeds, we'll be involved with it further. All right, so seeing no questions, we'll move on. I do believe that is the agenda, and we have an in-camera meeting, so motion to exclude the public under section 91A of the Union Charter.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? So just take a short breather.